Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Samantha, your mic is not on.
This is Station. I'm ready for the event.
ESA, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call Station for a voice check.
And this is the International Space Station. I have you loud and clear.
Very nice to hear you, Samantha. Always a pleasure. È un grande piacere, sono qui al Quirinale col presidente Mattarella. È un grande onore di essere qui e di avere questa conversazione e vorrei dire la parola direttamente al presidente della Repubblica.
I'd like to have a word directly with the President of the Republic, Mr. President.
È un grande piacere
It's a great pleasure
vederla,
to see you,
poter parlare con lei
to be able to talk with you,
e ringraziarla per il
and to
prestigio
thank
che
you
reca al nostro Paese.
for representing our
Mi
country
trovo
in the service
con,
rendered.
oltre che con il presidente, il direttore
And
dell'ESA, con il ministro
also with
Colau
the
e il
director
presidente
of the
dell'ASI.
ESA and the president of the ASA.
Qui a Roma nel
Here in
pomeriggio,
Rome, it's
lì i
in the
ritmi della
afternoon,
giornata sono molto
and I
differenti.
suppose over there the days are very different.
È un grande piacere
It's a
vederla.
great pleasure to see you. Yes, Mr. President, good afternoon. The pleasure is mine. Especially, I'm honored to be able to speak with you again from the space station, the International Space Station. I came aboard, as we like to say, to the persons with whom we have the privilege to speak from up here. It is a pleasure to be able to speak with you again several years after the first mission, and a great pleasure also to be able to have behind me the Italian flag, which I received from your hands in Rome some months ago.
La ringrazio molto di
I thank you very much
averla posta alle sue spalle.
to see you there
In questo periodo
during this period
sulla
of
terra di grandi tensioni
great
internazionali
international tensions
e di preoccupazioni
and of
molto allarmi al mondo
concerns
alto.
that are very elevated.
Nello spazio dimostra di essere
The
davanti
science in space shows that the way forward
dallo spirito che
is
muove
so
la guerra.
to way beyond the spirit that moves toward war, and we hope that the space will always remain, even in the future, immune to the competitions among powers
Anche per questo è molto
and to
importante
the
il
oppositions among
complesso degli
powers,
esperimenti che si
also
svolgono durante le missioni.
including the missions that are being done during these
Minerva
missions.
ne prevede 6.
And
Sono
these
iniziate con il suo arrivo a
have
bordo.
were begun with your arrival on board of the six.
Sperimentazioni. C'è
But
qualcuna
during
che
this
la
fermentation,
coinvolge maggiormente?
is there any one of these that primarily involves you? Mr. President, yes, absolutely. We're here aboard primarily to engage in the scientific research, as you've just mentioned, some of which experiments had already begun, in particular the one for diagnostic acoustics, which is to monitor the auditory function, also the nutritional, which is concentrated more on metabolic concerns, and also when the next mission arrives, there will be other operations that will begin from the Carlo vehicle, which will bring us a great number of experiments, which will be involving these researchers for the Italian program. There will be a study of oxidative stress, which is very interesting to study on the International Space Station, also with regard to the living systems, environmental systems. This is an experimental in vitro on cell cultures. In particular, we will study the stress, oxidative stress on the degeneration of the nervous system, which is the basis of mechanisms that will affect life on Earth, from which have affected many persons. There's another one, on the other hand, which studies the cells of the reproduction system. There's also a interesting one from a Tuscan group called Suture in Space, which studies the healthing process of injuries and wounds in space. It's very interesting to understand the mechanisms with which our body repairs cuts and lesions. And so there are many interesting experiments that we're engaged in. With this specific and concrete results from the results of experimentation on people, it is particularly important to underline the value of what is done in space. Also, for this reason, it is important to know these results from these experiments that are being performed. You have often been involved in scientific revelation and divulgation, especially to young people that are from space. This is a very important operation, and which obviously has very positive effects. Certainly, you will continue also on land to reveal, as we've mentioned, the impression that I have when I speak with young people is that apart from their enthusiasm for the new dimensions that you've referred to, is that they become involved in the scientific aspect and dimension. Is that not the case? Well, this, Mr. President, naturally is the hope with which we commit ourselves with astronauts and as astronauts in the divulgation and revelation functions. This is especially with regard to the synergies that involve teachers in schools, families, social structures, and involving the children. So this is something that we're able to do, be able to benefit from the fascination that space engenders, especially in young people, to be able to light within them a spark of curiosity. And this is something that we must continue to feed this particular interest through school, through lectures, through readings, and through cultural experiences through in society, as, shall we say, with the open doors regarding the experience of the university and the various environments to develop consciousness and understanding, especially to operating in a transparent manner to awaken this desire to coexist, citizens, boys and girls, for those who will be interested among them in science as a career, but also in every other sense, so that they feel that they're participants in that scientific research is also theirs. That is the case. I was reflecting on the fact that over the past century from now, when space will be much more frequented, and it'll be a different sort of experience, but hopefully always in a peaceful sense. These missions of these years are being remembered as the bases and pilasters on which the future will be based and supported. This must be the case based on your work in the Space Center, which is a thought that certainly motivates you and occurs to you rather frequently. Yes, absolutely. We know that we are among the first, laying the first small building blocks on this permanent and robust human presence in space, and ever more to travel further into space and to benefit from one day from the resources that are not on our land, on our Earth. Of course, these are the first facets, the first small bricks, building blocks toward the future. As astronauts, yes, but also in general, I believe the Italian Space Agency, the European Space Agency, is pleased to draw its attention increasingly with regard to space matters, regarding the importance of space in an increasing sense, not only for the taste for exploration, but also, as you mentioned, Mr. President, for all of the positive impacts that it will have on social life, on the well-being, on the economic conditions. And therefore, it's also a pleasure to see that Italy, and with Italy, all of Europe, demonstrates an ever-increasing ambition to continue to be countries that are industrial systems that are free in the world within a sector that becomes ever and ever important and ever more strategic. Hopefully, it will always remain a scientific sector and not an economic and not military sector. First of all, I'd like to ask you a personal question. I imagine that when you're in the space station, you feel a certain nostalgia for the Earth, and that when you're on Earth, you have a certain nostalgia for space. Which is the dominant emotion? Well, it's a question that, an interesting question. I must say I'm not a person who is nostalgic. It's not part of my personality structure to engage in nostalgia. I try to concentrate on the opportunities that are before me, especially when I'm in space, of course. I take advantage of the opportunities I have up here in space, knowing that within a few months I will be returning to Earth and I will be able to embrace my loved ones and to be able to enjoy the beauty of the opportunities that are on land. But absolutely, I believe that overall, life on Earth is the richer and more pleasant environment, more so than in space. But now the possibilities in space are still limited, as we were saying before. We are laying the first building blocks for our future in space. That's a very nice response because we know that science should be paramount.
Grazie.
Well, thank you.
Buongiorno, Samantha.
Hello, Samantha. I
I
also have a rather personal question. As the President was saying, you are our pride and joy. So as our pride, you've already made certain missions. Do you see any differences? Thinking about the future, do you think that it'll be possible to make many such missions? How do you feel, what differences do you feel with regard to the first time that you were up? Well, meanwhile, good afternoon, Mr. Minister. I'm fine. First of all, I'm very well here. I immediately felt very much at ease. I felt like I was returning home when I arrived in the space station. Everything immediately was very familiar, and I felt immediately very much at ease in the sense that I have a very pleasing and pleasant sensation. But in contrast with the first mission, I'm no longer a novice. This return to the space station is different. From the first time it was, shall we say, I was overwhelmed by various impressions, from an overload, cognitive overload, shall we say. This time everything I'm able to see everything more, seems more slowed down for me. All the details and all the things that I observe, I have a responsibility that is different from the previous. The first mission, not only to do my things well, but also to maintain a knowledge of everything that's happening on the American and European and Japanese spheres of the space station. And so I have certain additional responsibilities and the pleasure of having returned to this is in addition to the pleasure of having returned. So your feelings and your requirements are so intensively packed that it also could be possible that you might lose your concentration, considering the load of things to do. Well, let's say that it is an environment in which there is a certain level of alert that we have to maintain, in a sense, even in our free moments, in our relaxing periods. Because this vessel, this enormous mass which is the space station, enables us to live like human beings in this environment, which otherwise would be hostile. In space in Earth orbit, there's always a certain level of alertness that we have to maintain, and of course to be able to react to as needed and to necessities. This means that up there is a the intensity of your scientific labors compared to Earth, if anything, is more intense than the daily attention that you pay to science. And this is a good lesson from the space capsule. We have a great need for it.
Non abbia problemi per quanto riguarda la provenienza da stati diversi.
So you don't run into any problems with regard to the various requirements that are placed upon you. Everything is concentrated, of course. You're living together with other people. It's not that difficult, I would imagine. Yeah, this is so. We are all linked by this profession, which is a choice, a lifestyle choice. We're linked by our commitment with regard to the mission at our Space Center station, and also with regard to hundreds of thousands of people who, in one way or another, hundreds of thousands of people who built this and set up the experiments which we engage in on board. We're also linked by personal friendships. And so it's a privileged environment, I would say, which enables us to be able to face the things that unite us, knowing that we have a responsibility for something that is very large and beautiful, because the International Space Station now represents, for 20 years, I believe, something that is luminous and light, also as a source of inspiration for many people. This is very important because it is a message to be sent to the world of collaboration without distinctions of origins. This is a message, a very important one. And I don't know if you're aware, but the load of attention and expectations that everyone has with your station. How do you feel about all of that? Well, certainly we are knowledgeable that we are involved in something that warms the heart, this great pleasure that we derive. We also try to do the very best to live together, to bring in some way or other, in every way possible, all the people who are together with us to share in this adventure that we have, that we're privileged to enjoy. And also we have a responsibility to coexist, to live jointly with people who are with us and who are also passionately involved in what we're doing. These experimentations, my last question, there's also prosecuted on land. With this development, the hierarchic development, there's a collaboration afterward, is there not? Certainly that is the case with all the experiments that I personally am involved in and my colleagues are involved in. They've been the subject of the experiments. After the flight, we have to make a certain number of repetitions of these same experiments to be able to compare, for example, to see how much time, given certain biological parameters, how quickly we can return to normality, or whether we are in fact able to return to normality. These are data that are important in order to validate the experimentation and the observations made on board. These experiments that personally involve me, as I've mentioned, reflect the relation we have with investigators and researchers. And often we develop a fine personal rapport with them over the years after the data evaluation phase is completed. It can sometimes take many years, and which lead to publications of results, papers and reviews. And so which of course is one in which we share data and gives us great pleasure. I thank you very much, and I wish you continued good work. Mr. Asio would like to also send greetings. Hello, Samantha. I repeat, Samantha. We are very happy to see you once again. I like to think that you're thinking about the future, also in the future exploratory missions that you're thinking about already from the station. And so I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, Mr. President. I just feel that it's been a real pleasure and a great honor, Mr. President, and Mr. Minister Kalau, and President Sakocha. Thanks for having been aboard the station, space station with us, and hope to see you soon. Thank you, and we wish you the best of work.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes our event.
Thank you to all participants from ESA. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.